Hello, I am Elliot Stewart. This other person isn't. His name is...
I'm Gaz. Hello there.
You're quite loud, Gaz, but I don't
Am I?
You're wearing garish underpants. But
No.
See, just guessing. And we are the Divergence in Time, and today we'll be looking at Doctor Who. But my favourite season of all time, possibly a guilty pleasure, difficult to tell, is season 17. Now, for less nerdy people, that is the last but one season of Tom Baker that was script edited by Douglas Adams of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. And it's got, I think, about 6 stories.
When we say 6 stories, we must be careful because, of course, the 6th story wasn't actually broadcast.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes. Yes. I remember there being slightly a provocative bit in the book, which we'll get to later, about where the baddie gets a lift from a young man in his 20s, and he seems quite attractive to the baddie. And there's quite a lot of prose style that seems possibly to be leaning into more of an erotic persuasion, but we won't necessarily go there.
Oh, my.
Yes, indeed. Oh my. Oh, sorry. That's
yeah, it's probably copyrighted by George Takei, hasn't it?
I think that's my solo effort. Anyway, so first of all, the first story in season 17. Oh, it started in when did it start? In September 1979. How old were you then, and were we the same age?
We were.
I would say
I would have been back calculator 7, 8,
yeah,
thereabouts. Yeah, old enough to remember it. Old enough to remember it watching it the first time round. Though I obviously have watched it since. So.
Well, I mean, what I remember at that age is that you take everything quite seriously. You know, you might watch Rent a Ghost or Cracker Jack. Okay.
No reaction there.
And that sort of stuff. But
that would fill the entire podcast recording if we kept doing that every time we mentioned the certain program you just did.
That's the C word that we're not going to say. So Destiny of the Daleks, I can remember of that age taking it quite seriously, and then seeing it years later to discover that it's a mishmash. It's half serious and half Douglas Adams putting a lot of quips in.
It is undoubtedly one of my favourite Tom Baker stories, so I am very biased on Destiny. So it's.
Do you like? It starts off with that traditional Terry Nation thing of having a mysterious episode, where that's quite like a spooky kind of having a gravel pit and a spaceship, and all the little elements start arriving, apart from the main one, which is the Daleks. Because
despite the fact we know it's going to be about the Daleks because it's in there in the title, but it makes that smash appearance to them at the end of the episode. Oh my lord, it's the Daleks! Oh yeah, of course it's the Daleks.
Well, maybe the show that particular episode should have an alternative title. I mean, maybe it should be called the Movellan Experience. It looks like a disco thing.
Yeah, disco robots from the moon. Oh yes.
But maybe that's the thing. I mean, they were obviously. The last season was, I think, I'm going to get this wrong, is Key to Time, which was an all-encompassing story. And I don't know what the ratings were like up and down at that point. I love Key to Time. So they obviously were trying to get people, it's Doctor Who, it's coming back, it's the autumn, here are the Daleks. So, and then there they were. But also, and I can't remember which episode he shows up in, Davros returns.
Yeah. Now that was cool. That was more unexpected. I mean, I can remember the idea that discovering that deep below the Skaro, what are the Daleks digging for? Well, it's their creator who has been entombed here after he was exterminated back in Genesis. No, I thought that was cool at the time. I still think it stands up even today.
I'm doing the hand movement because that's there's a motif. One of the Movellans with these robots. One of them gets zapped or killed or something, and the doctor goes to look, and the Movellan says, no, you mustn't see us in death. And the camera sort of lingers, and you see the hand move like that. And later on, when Davros is brought back to life, the cliffhanger involves his hand doing this as well. So there's a little, whether it's a homage to Anthony Newley's Journey Slade, where he goes, that's a very old reference. I can't tell you. What I can tell you is my nose is itching, so I'm just going to go off screen for a second. That's better. There you go. That's not going to be a running gag. So,
No.
So you got Destiny Daleks. The baddies are the Movellans. But as a kid, did you sort of twig they were the baddies at the beginning because they weren't?
No, they seemed quite altruistic, didn't they, in the early episodes? I can't say on first watching that I was, shall we say, mature enough to sort of twig. Hang on, they've got to have an ulterior motive. Why are they really here? You know, with their lovely shiny disco suits and fantastic looking. I love their weapons. I mean, maybe they were obviously from the same prop studio as Blake Seven at the time, but I just love the design aesthetic about them as a whole. I'm really disappointed they've never brought them back in the series.
They make a brief occurrence or appearance, I should say, in a Stephen Moffat episode. Season 10, I think, it's them, that's it. And I like the fact that the Daleks bring back Davros because they're out of ideas. They've got nothing.
Is that meta commentary on Doctor Who at that period?
Definitely. And then what do they do? And this is so difficult to tell which this bit was written by Terry Nation or by Douglas Adams, is that he straps bombs to all the Daleks and then sends them to hug the spaceship that belongs to Movellans. That's his plan.
Can you imagine doing that in the kind of the modern day and age? That the plot line could be quite edgy, wouldn't it? You know, I'm sending my creations as suicide bombers.
Yeah.
But then at that point, there was this. I always had this discontinuity with the Daleks of, are they organic, are they robots? I think we're back to being they are semi-organic at that point, aren't they? So...
Well, they do what they're told in that particular thing. I mean, the whole Frankenstein monster attacking his creator thing, which is in Genesis of the Daleks, this is sort of like moved on now. Now the Daleks are desperate because they've got a new villain that they don't know how to fight. So they get Davros. Davros shows up. Now there's the elephant in the room, not a Dalek elephant, which is the fact that we've been talking as if this is a really serious serial. But when you watch it now, and budget's never been an issue with Doctor Who, but it does look incredibly cheap. And also there are so many jokes riddled all over it. And I like jokes, and I like, Douglas Adams' approach to stuff. But it's strange. Can you imagine if this series, Death and Daleks, had been done in the Philip Hinchcliffe era? It would have been much darker and much more based and all these sort of things.
But would it have been as much fun?
No, I think it would have been. I don't think there are any bad Philip Hinchcliffe stories. I mean, you say Android Invasion or Planet of Evil, but they're still really good.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got to counterpoint it with, obviously City of Death, which comes next, and City of Death, I think, is a particularly dark story for its period.
Written by 3 people, so it's one of them isn't. Oh no, hang on. David Agnew, who is basically it's Douglas Adams, Graham Williams, who's the producer, and David Fisher, who's like the script editor, throwing all their ideas together, and suddenly so you have this alien who spaceship blows up and the Doctor's having a lovely time in Paris, but then some very posh person is up to no good trying to steal the Mona Lisa, but it turns out is an alien who got splintered in time and is trying to use technology to rescue himself from the beginning of episode 1.
You see, it's really interesting with my sort of memories of City of Death. In my mind's eye, I see it as one of the historical stories, despite the fact when it was made, it was contemporary. It was, set in 79. But in my memory, and when I watched it again more recently, it was like, oh, yeah, this wasn't an historical story per se. Okay, the Doctor does go back in time at one point. But my perceptions of it are, this is very much, this was set in some sort of slightly past era for the Doctors who are experiencing it. Oh, no. It's just 1979 Paris, and I've grown up since then. So, of course, now it is the past.
Well, when he does pop by to warn Da Vinci about what's happening, and then ends up meeting another version of the alien inhabiting another body of the person it's complicated. But that's just a room. We see a room in the past.
That's the cheapest element of time travel ever. Just a room. Yeah. I always remember. I remember I was in the Prado Art Gallery in Madrid. I turned to my other half at the time and I made some comment about a very famous painting. So basically got "fake" written on the back, and she just looked at me and went, "Oh yeah, sorry, Doctor Who reference. You're not going to understand. Sorry."
There must be lots of people who go to the top of the Eiffel Tower and say, "Goodbye, Duggan." I love, if I do go to Paris and I don't hear somebody say that, I will have to do that myself. So
I see. Yeah. I was going to say, if I'm on the Eiffel Tower, I'm expecting people with deadly fishing rods.
What's that? Oh,
kill James Bond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's. Well, then that is that interesting thing is because I was trying to think about what's happening at the same time as City of Death. So in the late 70s, James Bond is essentially Moonraker, is quite silly. Now, a lot of people see this era. I remember rediscovering the Graham Williams era as being something that people didn't like. And the writing is really, really good. It is a bit silly, and science fiction and silly sometimes people don't like.
And I watched some sort of contemporary straight drama, as we could perhaps call it, crime drama, and they're almost so serious as to feel unreal to me, because life isn't about perpetual grind. There's dark humor even in sort of these moments of terror for many people. But yeah, that's why I like my sci-fi with a certain side serving as silly.
Well, I mean, when I watched City of Death as a kid, I can still remember watching the mask get pulled off and there's an alien beneath it, and I was being quite terrified. But then years later, in 1990 something, when I got the VHS, it was a bit wobbly.
The Jaggeroth face, I love that. It's the tentacle sort of thing. I thought that was a top bit of special effects. And I won't make the apology for of its era. I still think it's a top bit of special effects. Nice bit of prosthetics.
So next coming up after City of Death, we have got Creature from the Pit, which is something I don't remember seeing, and I had to, when I finally got it on DVD. The story of that one is, I think it's a planet where there is no metal. I think,
yeah.
And then the Doctor gets some sort of SOS call, arrives, but there's no one there who gave it to him. And there's like a very cool, strong female baddie, and she's in charge of this planet, or at least she's controlling the military force. And there's a sort of a kind of an egg or something that, and there's something in a pit where if people disagree with her, they throw those people into the pit, and slowly but surely, elements of what I've just told you start gluing together. Again, it has got this Douglas Adams thing all the way through it, so it's an awful lot of comedy and quipping and funny voices. There are giant green fur balls that attack K9 at some point.
And that's the image of this whole episode. When we say Creature from the Pit, I mean, weirdly, it's one of those that I don't just remember the episode, I remember the kind of associative memory around it of the Saturday tea time, the darkness, the programmes on before and after, and very much this was Doctor Who in that period. So weirdly, this might have been the episode that really, really clicked me into Doctor Who. Even though I've been watching it for a season or two before this, this was the one that I really start remembering. And yet, I didn't like it much.
I watched this at a Doctor Who evening a few years ago with a pseudopodia, a sticky, sort of big green willy-shaped thing coming around the corner. And we were watching it, and I was going, "It's a monster," and everybody else got the giggles. I was like, "It's childish. It might look like what it is, but it isn't what you think it is." I think quite a serious plot. This is the interesting thing about season 17. You've got the City of Death and Destiny of the Daleks and Creature from the Pit, and the stories are quite serious with monsters killing people or time travel or, as you say, suicidal bomb Daleks. It's not as if the stories are silly. And we weren't forgetting to mention, goodness me, is the fact that Romana in this season is played by somebody else. In fact, she gets introduced in the first story as a series of different bodies that she's choosing. So the Lala Ward is absolutely brilliant in this. And Mary Tam was very good. Though, when I was watching this with my wife, she said that Mary Tam is a little bit like Margot out of The Good Life. She stands around and complains about everything, So there's a story that happens in the next season, Leisure Hive, where there are some aliens and there's a communication device that's absent, and an alien puts it on and speaks to the Doctor in the final episode to say, well, you've got to do something very clever because, I've been trying to talk to you, but I can't. What we're going to do, explosion, it's the end of the episode kind of thing. And this happens in Creature from the Pit as well. And I think it's written by the same person, David Fisher. And it's the same thing. There's this wibbly-wobbly monster, but it turns out to be an ambassador from another planet. And the thing that's on the baddie's wall, I really like the plot about this. The baddie has a thing on her wall, which looks like a decoration, but actually it's some sort of emblem that enables the creature to communicate. But it hasn't been. It's been stuck down in a cave. And the only way it seems to communicate with people is eat them. I'm not sure.
So I mean, but then it's the classic, story of a misunderstood monster. That the monster, the true monster is man, or indeed the natives of the planet, rather than the creature that appears monstrous to our eyes. I mean, that's the sort of simple thing at its heart, along with some roly things to encase K9. And like I say, it's those furry ball things are the things that I definitely remember most sharply from that one. But
now you were talking about the only monster being man or stroke human, and so that's
human form.
Science can be perverted, which basically leads us nicely into Nightmare of Eden, which is a serious story. It's about drug running. It's about how you get affected by narcotics and everything. 2 spaceships in midair crash because the person flying it is high on some nasty space drug. The Doctor just shows up spontaneously.
I swear this story escaped from Blake 7.
Yeah.
I really, rewatching it, I'm kind of going, this just is very resonant of sort of season 2, Blake 7. I could just replace the Doctor and Romana with the Liberator crew somehow in this.
Yeah.
But I'm not denigrating it, because I really like Nightmare of Eden. I like the darker elements, maybe because it wasn't on a planet in a pit in darkness, that it was a funky spaceship, and I am a sucker for a funky spaceship. Even a Doctor Who one where the set might not be the finest. I liked it. I liked the sci-fi idea of the merged ships. That was really nice. That seemed a nice sci-fi concept on which we actually hung a story of drug running. It's a human level conflict really, but the instigating incident is this beautiful sci-fi thing.
And you got these monsters. I remember seeing it for the first time, I think, in the 90s. And I was confused. I know the origins of the mandrels, which is probably could have been the title of it, but confused people. But they turn out to be the core of the plot themselves. That when they get blown, they are the drug.
Yeah.
And what is interesting is I remember seeing that story, and when the ships crash, I was convinced that the crashing of the ship made the monsters happen, but no, they escaped.
There's slavery as well, because they're not just extracting the drug. This race is sentient, semi-sentient after all. So yeah, it's very clear who the bad guys are in this in that respect. It's very soon get the idea that it's the drug runners. These people. It may seem that it's the mandrels are the foe, and very early on that is what it is. It's the collision, the escape of the mandrels. But it's that sort of deeper story that's there. And it's one of those things that I think has been missing in, say, some of the new Who in recent years, is the bad guy. Oh, it is the bad guys. There is no subtext. It's all text. And here, I think there's sufficient subtext to make quite a good story.
There's some really scary bits. I remember that the instant that the captain of the ship, by accident, has a glass of water, and the drug gets put in it, and he starts acting giggly, and then there's a point where the monsters are attacking people inside a spaceship, some of the customers, and they're being attacked. You go, it doesn't matter, they're only economy class. There's some very dark the close-ups of a person being attacked by a monster like this. And it's like for all of the cheap production values and the sense of humor, it's just like, wow, that looks like something out of a late Hitchcock movie. And there's a point where he's then later on he's desperate for a hit, because it's almost like you're told when you're a kid in the 80s, like the instant that you have one bit of drug, that's it, you're addicted for life. It's very much I never saw Grange Hill and Zammer and everything, but I got the impression that if you were in a room with somebody with drugs, that was it. And that's what the Nightmare of Eden is sort of saying. And I think that in between all that, there is this sort of like a disaster movie feel to it. They're running for their lives in a spaceship.
Beside an adventure sort of feel. Yeah.
I mean, also you have, again, I do like a good sense of humor, and I don't mean to be complaining about that, but throughout it, everybody is not gurning, not being silly, but the guards that some security force show up and to try and stop the Doctor, and they are kind of, where did he go? What's going on? They're a bit comedic, and it lessens. For me, it's fun, but I can see where it would lessen the drama a lot if you're not scared of the baddie. I mean, the smart thing about this particular era is you have got Douglas Adams running all the way through it, and as much as he does do comedy, he has got he gets pulled in and intrigued by science. So I can imagine like, oh, we're going to have, you know, a hyperspatial collision between two planets, or we're going to have a whole society on Chloris, this planet where there's no metal. And, you know, and we're coming up to, at the moment, we're whizzing through these, but there's nothing wrong with that. I'll rephrase that. But we're coming up to the Horns of Nimon at the moment.
I was going to say, when you started talking about people being turned off by chewing the scenery and perhaps silly elements in the Nightmare of Eden.
Yeah.
Oh my lord, it's there in spades in the Horns of Nimon.
Yeah. So Horns of Nimon,
again, from a fine actor.
Yes. Well, that's interesting. Basically, Horns of Nimon. You have the TARDIS crashes into a ship which has got a collection of people in it who are like sacrifices. They're being taken to a planet who is being controlled by the Nimon, and they demand sacrifices. And a particular race is being picked on to be given over to the Nimon, who promise that this once great empire that ruled a planet will return again. So they're, again, quite a serious plot.
Oh, but then it is, of course, just adapting a Greek legend. So that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's so, as you say, dark, but also quite detailed. I mean, the whole tale of Theseus and the Minotaur. I mean, it's funny enough, one I read about at school. So not sure if I read it before or after I saw this, but it was certainly one of those things that when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, you know, what's a few years ago now. And I think it was the camp elements that I enjoyed more than the heart of the story. I think every time Graham Crowden's character, Soldeed, wasn't on screen, I was like, oh, it's the other characters. Oh, it's the also ran young teenagers sort of things who are to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. I'm not so much interested in them. I just want Tom Baker and Graham Crowden to chew the scenery at each other. And that's is delivered in spades in this episode. So
yeah, his death with the my dreams of conquest, you'll die for your interference.
Up there with Brian Blessed being beamed off the Liberator.
Yeah, that's quite good. But I remember a documentary in almost 30 years ago now called Resistance is Useless, I think it was. It was a BBC sort of celebration of Doctor Who. Not that they really bothered in the 30th year, but they made this little thing on BBC Two, and they showed allegedly the bad acting clips, of which was the Horns of Nimon death of the big baddie. But when you watch it, if anything, that is the lesser of his big performances, because he is from the start all the way up to 11, and if you enjoy that, then it's fun.
Exactly, which is why I say at the time watching it, as a youngster, I probably didn't enjoy it as much as when I came back to it as an adult with perhaps a broader palette to appreciate. The base story is fine. The concepts are good. The Minotaur's good. The Nimon rather. But Soldeed, oh yeah, Soldeed just sells it for me. And by the way, Elliot, how can you say they didn't celebrate the 30th anniversary when they made Dimensions in Time that year?
Oh, I feel such a fool.
And let's not get into that here.
Well, we can review that later, I think. So here we are. We're not in 1993 to confuse people. We are in 1979. And I do remember watching this being about 7 or 8, and I was quite scared of the Nimon. They have weird voices. They lumber around like this, and
funky horns.
And everybody else. This is the important thing, that all the actors act as if they are an incredible monster. They're not. They're not. How to put it down? Tom Baker occasionally would make mock of the Zygons and everything, but when the Nimon show up, everybody's absolutely terrified of them.
I like the Zygons. It's a good monster design.
I wasn't knocking the Zygons. I'm just saying Tom Baker would say, "Oh well, you see, you're sort of going to wave a tentacle, are you?" and all that sort of stuff. He'd do that, but when it comes to the Nimon, he doesn't sort of go, "Oh, hello there," and sort of say, "Oh, bully beef for you." He doesn't say anything silly like that. Even though this is his silly period. This is once Graham Williams kicked in to be the producer, Tom Baker had a lot more Could I put more jokes in? Could I do more? He was a powerful force. So particularly this season as well, he is really slightly on fire. He doesn't give. I don't think any doctors give sort of any bland performances. I know we are going to be talking about season 11, Jodie Whittaker, in the future, and whatever your opinion on her, that we will discover. But with Tom Baker at this particular point, it's odd because, and I was just thinking of a James Bond analogy here. Like, this could have been the last Tom Baker season because he's giving it all. It's a great, big, huge, silly pantomime, particularly of a thing in a good way. Big, huge entertainment. It's the end of the year, like a pantomime, and then basically James Bond's doing exactly the same thing. Moonraker is pure entertainment, and then what happens is we have another movie. We have For Your Eyes Only, which is sort of semi-serious. It's got some silly goofy. It's very serious. Same thing. The next season of Doctor Who, season 18, it's got some silly bits, but it's more serious. But people didn't really like it. But
that tends to be the way it goes with things that are serialized, or as you say, movie serials. That they always swing one way. And if they've swung so far one way, there's always that tension to sort of swing it back to self-correct, and then swing back the other way. It's one of the reasons with the Daniel Craig ones, I felt they've swung so seriously, going off a slight tangents here, but they've swung so serious in those movies that I'm really hoping the next James Bond goes back to being some more spy-fi or a little camper in its interpretation, because I really don't want another grimdark Jason Bourne-esque Bond series coming out.
Horns of Nimon is a strange season finale, but it wasn't going to be.
No.
So you mentioned earlier on Sharda, which is written by just purely Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
And I
feel so deprived. We had another purely written by Douglas Adams episode that we lost to strikes.
Yeah. I mean, so what's interesting in a way with Sharda is the fact that we'll never really know what it would be like, despite there being a gazillion different versions of it, from audio to animation to the book. It's quite a long story. It's a good 6-parter, and or I think good is in a way. It's so difficult to tell because there's some great character work in it. I mean, the story is about I don't like looking at the Wikipedia. I'm trying to remember if I can remember exactly what happened. So there's
I just like the fact that it involved another Time Lord. At its heart, and there was, I am again, I love it when the series kind of delves into Time Lord related things sparingly. I think they need to be used sparingly, but I felt this was an appropriate point for us to kind of have it. We'd had the Deadly Assassin the last time the Fourth Doctor had been involved really with Gallifrey, and then we have this, and Romana, who is someone who has been, originally sent from Gallifrey or via the White Guardian to kind of work with the Doctor. This is a chance for her to kind of interact with these elements of Time Lord culture and not be, this, in some regards, superior to the Doctor, the bumbling ex-Time Lord almost, and perhaps be a little bit out of her own comfort zone. And I think that could have been quite interesting to see.
So you have a fusty old professor, Professor Chronotis, and he's in Cambridge. And he's a little bit like the people that you see in Deadly Assassin. He's like a sort of crusty old, hello, I'm a Time Lord, I don't quite know what I'm doing because we've sort of been doing this for ages. Sort of satire of the British educational system, if you like, and all that kind of thing. So when it comes to the story, again, we have, maybe it's a theme in this, I'm not sure. We have an amazingly over-the-top baddie who's back for revenge, essentially. Trying to remember it's quite complicated, this one, isn't it? Because it's sort of like there's a book of Gallifrey that gets read or scanned, and that opens up a prison to release a baddie who doesn't turn out to be there because it turns out to be somebody else. Saryavin is him. Who I can't remember. There's a very tall Skagra is a baddie in it with a really cool white outfit and a hat, walking around trying to find. See, this is not like a research. I think that there's a plot in these 6 episodes. It's just very, very simple, and it's stretched out to the point that I can't really remember what it is that we're running up and down corridors to avoid. There are monsters.
That'll be episode 3.
So, but again, you have got, this is just pure Douglas Adams, and some lovely dialogue and lovely character stuff, but a little bit like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I absolutely love,
Mm.
is that the plot and the story are not the core of it. The main core of it are what the characters do and the set pieces. So the main story of Sharda is nicely overcomplicated, a bit like Pirate Planet, which I absolutely think is the previous season. And I think that Douglas Adams is a great comedy writer and a great science fiction comedy writer. But when it comes to like stories, it really matter that they don't make a great deal of sense because you're enjoying yourself so much.
You're back, as you're saying, in this period of sort of television movie production. You know, it's a period of pure entertainment being produced, and that the narrative wasn't as important. I mean, you know, I'm a huge Bond fan, and I will freely admit that many of the narratives do not hold up, but the set pieces hold together well. The acting is enjoyable, the interaction between the characters, and the general feel I come away with is one of enjoyment. I've had a great time. I'm really, you know, happy to go on. And I would say I think I would have adored Sharda if it had been made at the time. I can see it would have absolutely resonated with me. It would have spoken to me because, you know, a little bit of the Time Lords, you know, a plot that isn't an alien invasion or another civilization. This is about, you know, some of the Doctor's people and what they do. And there are some interesting philosophical questions coming up about, you know, why the Time Lords are operating a prison planet in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, that's that thing, isn't it, where you've got the decrepit old Gallifrey as seen in Deadly Assassin and in Invasion of Time and all those sort of things. And before that, they're this mysterious force. And it's very, very postmodern what they do in season 14, where they sort of take the big baddies and say, actually, that they're just a crumbling, decrepit sort of thing. But what is interesting is you do have the breakaway characters from Gallifrey, from the Time Meddler to the Rani, to obviously Professor Chronotis, and even more recently with the Fugitive Doctor, where they aren't really. There isn't a great deal of their backstory told, or the Master. I think the if you reveal too much about a baddie or a mysterious character, too much, then they just become an ordinary person. It's quite nice to.
It's the same thing with the Doctor, isn't it? I mean, you know, the more you reveal of their backstory, the less mysterious they become, and the more tightly you have to draw them because well, they're this kind of person. And actually, you know, regeneration aside, by keeping them mysterious, by keeping the individual members of their people at an arm's length at all time, you can always have that ambiguity. So you can write them in different ways at different points in their time cycle, at different points in the Doctor narrative. So yeah, I would agree. So this is what I say. I like the Time Lord element. I like it, but yeah, always sparingly. But I think this was a good way to deal with one particular aspect of sort of Time Lord society and one. I don't know. What do you call Chronotis? You know, what do you call him? A renegade Time Lord? I suppose.
Chronotis turns out to be the big baddie that they were looking for in the first place.
Yeah. So I cannot remember. This is because it has been some years since I read it. Is he a Time Lord, or is he someone who is just a prisoner of the Time Lords?
Well, I think Professor Chronotis, basically, there was a character called Sariavin, who the Doctor admired growing up, or what a sort of renegade Time Lord he was, but no one knew what happened to him. And then it turns out that Professor Chronotis is him.
Is him, yeah.
And he got his memory wiped so that he could protect, or people wouldn't know where Sharda was, which was a prison planet with, I can't remember what they're trying to get to. So as we've discussed, obviously, entertainment is very important in the late 70s and probably now. So we're going to go back, if you don't mind. I'm going to look at. So first of all, we've discussed Destiny of the Daleks. So I feel like sometimes, like when you watch Eurovision, is you give 2 marks for it, you know, like for production and story and everything. But I think basically we could just say, I mean, I think we're going to say this for pure entertainment value, non-ironically, with your tongue in cheek. I mean, I do find Destiny of the Daleks, a lot of the ideas I like, but it feels a little bit like it could have been a bit better. It's sort of like it meanders a little bit, but I do like the core of it. So I'm going to give that sort of 7 out of 10. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, it's a solid 10 for me because it is one of those Doctor episodes that when I can look at on my collection, and I will happily bring it down any time and watch it. I enjoy it each time I've seen it, there's something else to appreciate it. For me, it's an archetypal Tom's era story and a great Doctor Who story, full stop. So no, solid 10.
Ooh, so I might give it another look, you see, because I haven't. It's one of those ones I don't have on DVD, so I haven't seen it very often. So now, City of Death, I feel very unoriginal by saying 10 out of 10 for me, because it is just so rewatchable, and it's quotable, and the story really good, and I don't get bored, and it's so I imagine you're going to say 10 out of 10 as well, but
I would say I'm going to say 8 out of 10. I mean, it's absolute classic. There's no denying it, but there's just some elements of it, and I can't put my finger on what it is that stops it being an absolute pinnacle for my own personal experience.
Yes.
Yeah, but I again could watch it pretty much any time, but it not as easily as I could watch Destiny.
Now we mentioned Creature from the Pit, and I don't remember you particularly saying it was a good one. So
it's a middling 6. It's one that, if I happen to be doing nothing much, I would happily sit and watch it. But it's probably not going to be one I'm going to seek out to rewatch unless I was doing a season rewatch, which is always possible. But I'd be looking forward to the next story while I was watching it, probably more.
Well, I got given by a friend of mine, Rich Adley, a copy of the Creature from the Pit book, like a novelisation. And you can take it really seriously. It doesn't have any of the jokes at all. It has better production values, as so many of the books do. So it's weird. When I think of the book, I give it like an 8 out of 10. When I think of the TV show, I don't like saying 5 because there's so much of it I like. But I'm going to give it a 6.
Yeah, I think that's a fair grade for it. That.
Now we're hitting Nightmare of Eden now, and I instantly my brain just goes 7.
Do you know? I've got to agree with you. Absolutely. I mean, I again enjoyed it, have re-enjoyed it. It's not going to be anyone's all-time classic favourite, but there is, as we've discussed, a really solid, interesting narrative and meta-narrative underscoring it all. I think for that reason, it's probably one of the best scripted episodes, even if the production perhaps lets it down in a few places, the old wobbly set aspect, and certainly with looking at it with modern eyes, it does look a little clunky in places, but I think it's a solid 7 as well.
Now, when it comes to entertainment, Horns of Nimon, I watch
11. There's no, isn't it?
it's always those difficult things, because you can watch it and have fun with it and be really silly and tongue in cheek and go, this is so bad it's good. But I watched it, and I still watch it with the eyes of myself when I was 7. So I give it like a 9 out of 10, secretly knowing that it's probably really a 5 out of 10.
You see, I've split the difference. That I love it for entertainment, but I am not enjoying a lot of the elements of the young sacrifices, and it's got to be a 7 for me. So it's up there with good rewatchability, good enjoyability. I'm sneakily thinking maybe I should have given it 8, but I'm going to stick on a 7.
So basically, we've got Shada, which is a bit difficult because
I know, yeah, I can't.
So many different versions.
How do you rate something I've never actually watched a full version of?
Well, because I've got the VHS version, which has all the little narrative in it, and I've seen some of the cartoon version, and I've definitely read the book, and I think there's an audio version with Paul McGann. I think there is a decent story in this, but it's stretched out to 6 episodes when it could have been a really cool 4 episodes. The character work is really, really good, but it's a little bit, it meanders a little bit. It's that thing where sometimes I think that like Doctor Who stories have to have an absolute tangible threat. We must do this or that. We must do that, or that person's going to die. Or even if it is a silly one, even if it's Creature from the Pit, there's a monster in a pit, or Nightmare of Eden, it's drugs, or Death and Daleks, it's the Daleks, obviously. But with Shada, I think there's so much happening that sometimes I just feel like I'm watching a sort of a funny collection of dramatic set pieces rather than.
Yeah,
I'm about to say 4. I'm going to say 5 out of 10.
I see. If it had been made in the way that in my head I've seen it through reading it, it would be easily an 8 for me. without a doubt, because of the Time Lord elements, because of the kind of the plot, because of the kind of slightly different take on something. It's not a monster of the week problem. But, and this is a big but, I know Douglas Adams' writing, sometimes the concepts are sharper than the reality and execution. And I fear that, would it actually have been made on screen? Would it, because when you get people who are their own script editors, Moffat, there are moments when they run away with themselves. And I really fear this could be one he could have run away with himself and it would not have been as grand and as great in my head. But I'm going to say it's 8 because that's what it was in my head. And I'm going to live with that.
Now, at that point, like Douglas Adams, I can't remember exactly when the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV show happened. I think it was on the cusp of
81.
Yeah, so basically he was writing, then got given that to do. And the same way that Moffat was doing Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Who simultaneously. And you have this sort of thing with this particular season where I can't tell whether I'm enjoying it tongue-in-cheek or enjoying it because I'm still seeing it as the eyes of when I was a small child, or enjoying the witty writing. But the fact that it's got all these layers, there are some...
Are you enjoying it is the important question,
yes.
I think, when you start analysing anything and worrying about, am I enjoying it on this level, this level? Do I enjoy it? It's a simple question. If the answer is yes, great, you're enjoying it and it's a good episode. It doesn't matter which elements you're enjoying it, but you're just enjoying the whole. And as you say, that is Doctor Who. It is this sort of great big layer cake that is made up of these different concepts, at times sweet, at other times salty, bitter, dark, light. It is, and it's the nearest we've got to an anthology in many respects. We have a central character and plus companions who travel throughout it, but it is this great framework on which you can hang these different approaches, which some will work for other people. I mean, I look at my other half when we watch an episode, modern era, classic era, and there are times when we're absolutely in accordance because we just recognise that's a great episode, everything came together. And there's other ones where she'll be disengaged because perhaps it's a bit too daft, or I didn't like that character, the acting was a little flat. But I'm going, oh yeah, but I really like the concepts, I really had a good time. And I realise, it's speaking to us on different levels. And we know that's not a classic episode in quite the same way. But there's still something, at least I've taken away from it. And there's other episodes that she comes away with that she's loved. And I've gone, yeah, but I feel I've seen this before in the classic era. And I realise sometimes it's my sort of nerdy experience because I've seen so much of Doctor Who that I am then seeing the new episode go, it's just a retread of something else.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that people always ask, if you met someone who'd never seen Doctor Who, what season would you recommend? Now, like this, that's a terrible question.
So hard.
Because you're going, well, maybe season, the first or second Tom Baker season, because it's all gothic and exciting and imaginative. And I'm going, yeah, probably. But again, it all depends which. If you introduced a modern sci-fi fan to Doctor Who, probably season 17 wouldn't be a good start because all they're going to see is wobbly sets and and a modern approach to it. But I really enjoyed. I don't have it, so if anyone wants to buy me the box set of I don't have it. I've got these on DVD in a drawer somewhere. But yeah, I would say, as far as giving the whole season a ranking, I mean, it's, a part of me is going 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, but it's 10 out of 10 because I have so much fun with it. I mean, there's so much variation of story. There's a cliche of like every Tom Baker story seems to end with an explosion or a computer, going crazy. But I think that's just a sci-fi cliche. I think all of the stories in this are so varied that you don't feel like you're watching the same thing. I think the great John Pertwee's first season, which sometimes you're watching that and they're in a room with a big computer that moves around and a professor comes in. That almost happens in most of the stories. It's very difficult. Which one are we watching now? But with this Creature from the Pit,
there's always a man from the Ministry who is either taken over, killed, or is actually the villain.
Yeah, and in most of that early season, which is very good. But I'd say with Nightmare of Eden, Horns of Nimon, Shardo, Creature from the Pit, City of Death, Destiny of Daleks, I would definitely be able to go that's the forest planet one. That's the underwater. That's the green cave one. That's that's the posh one in Paris. That's one with the Daleks. That's the one Horns of Nimon. That's the one with the giant that thing's going on.
That's a really good impression of the Nimon. That was excellent.
So but all in all, I think we have approached this season and very carefully, because it's obviously I think both of us are very fond of it.
Oh yeah,
and for
absolutely.
me, I think it's my first exposure to Doctor Who. I try and think back, is it my first ever? And I think it was. And is it your first Doctor Who exposure?
No, like I say, I definitely had watched it for a season or two before this point. And even very, very as far back as the Time Warrior, I saw, but probably as a repeat, but as a very young child. So, but as I say, it's certainly a season I can remember sharply. I can remember the Key to Time season as well.
Yeah.
But perhaps not as sharply as this season.
I have bits of what I thought were Doctor Who, but I think turned out to be not Children of the Stones, turned out to be Into the Labyrinth. And I was like, oh, there's this bit in this cave and this happens and this. Oh, wait a minute, that's Into the Labyrinth. And I got that DVD. And that's written by some of the Doctor Who, Bob Baker, who wrote some of that. And there is a strange golden era, if you like, of sci-fi by the BBC or ITV, where, like the Tomorrow People or like this particular season of Doctor Who, is they knew they had really ambitious ideas, but they knew they couldn't achieve them, but didn't mean we wouldn't try. So that they go for it. And I really admire that. I think nowadays we have Doctor Who on a massive budget, and of course it's going to be on Disney Plus now, so it's going to be huge budget. So anything that anybody wants, we can achieve. So Nightmare of Eden with the two spaceships crashing into each other, they could CGI that now.
I just hope we don't lose strong narrative. I think that's got to be at the core of any drama, Doctor Who especially. And as you say, there's that danger that when you've got a budget where the sky's the limit, to let spectacle and showcasing and explosions run away with it. It's got to be a sharp narrative, got a good characterization. It's got to be nuanced acting that balances that light and that dark element that has made the show throughout its eras.
But has it? So next time we return, we will be talking about season 11, which was the debut of Chibnall as a full runner and Jodie Whittaker as, in my mind, a sort of nice dotty aunt, which I rather enjoyed. And we'll see what your opinions are about that. So thank you, Gaz. And
thank you, Elliot.